Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I have kind of like it was kind of a passing thought, but I believe it is something that happens to all of us that are chronically ill, or thoughts that those of us that are sick have from time to time. So I got a DM from some, random guy on Twitter, and he had been posting something um, like this post about how all of his friends were like in relationships or getting married, and here he was like sitting in his boxers watching cartoons or something on TV. I don't know. He made that, he tweeted something like that out, and I just put a comment saying, oh, wait till your friends start setting you up with the worst possible people that they can find. And so he starts DMing me, and he's just like, oh, so what happened, like trying to start a conversation with me. And I mean, that's not, that wasn't anything that I was really like concerned about. What came to my mind, after we had this exchange or this conversation, um I just thought to myself, man, people really worry about some trivial stuff. And I've had that thought before. Like when I hear people complaining, even my parents or siblings or whatever, and I think to myself, wow, you guys are so lucky that those are your complaints, that that's like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you right now. And of course, because I've been feeling horrible these last several months, it's even, things seem even more trivial when I hear people complain. So, and again, these aren't, to that person, it isn't a trivial thing. For some people, um, a relationship, marriage, having kids is not trivial. That's like the end goal for them. And for me, I mean, it never was before I got sick, but it definitely isn't now that I am sick. And so when I hear people, because he seemed kind of freaked out, like, he posted that tweet, and then I replied to it because I thought it would be a funny response. And then it was like he immediately started messaging me, like almost like he was having some sort of a crisis, or he was feeling really lonely in that moment. And after the whole exchange, it was a normal exchange. I just kind of thought to myself, like, wow, people just, I always, and this is gonna sound really bad. I always think in my head, man, people are so weak. And I know that that is, again, very judgmental, and you know different people value different things. But I think, I did do a video on like being kind of like a narcissist when you're chronically ill. Like, I think it's called chronic illness narcissism, because I have noticed that a lot with people who are chronically ill, that we somehow seem to think that we've got it worse than anyone else, and that, we just have a right to just complain and complain and complain, because we believe that we've got the worst case of whatever it is that we have. And I think that comes into play here, because I just, I listen to people sometimes, and I'm just like, how could you complain about this? Like, he's still relatively young. Men don't get married until they're like in their 40s nowadays, or ever. And I was like, wow, you're healthy, you're young, you've got a job, you're living your life. Why are you freaking out about something like this? Something that seems so trivial to me. And I feel that often. I feel that, when I hear people complain um, about work, especially because I really wish that I could work. I really wish that I could do something besides sit at home and, drown in my own thoughts. Um, so, it's really one of those things where I have to really dial it back. I have to sort of come to a little bit of an awareness of what I'm thinking, and tell myself, look, these things are important to these people. Like, these people do not have chronic medical issues. They're not, constantly having to manage a medical issue. So they have their jobs and stuff, but also there are these other things that they worry about. There are these marriage. If people want to get married, some people want to have kids, and they know that they only have a limited amount of time to have children. That's normal life. And I think what happens is that, because I've been sick for so long, and many of us that are chronically ill have been sick for years and years, some people decades, and we lose touch with normal life, right? If I wasn't sick, I'd be working. At this age, at my age, I probably would be married already. I probably would have had kids, even though I never wanted kids. I probably would have done it anyways because that's just the trajectory of life, right? Um, and now that I'm sick, all that stuff seems so pointless and so trivial to me. Like worrying about that stuff, and I guess because I'm constantly struggling to manage my health, to improve my quality of life, to not die, I guess. And to me, all those things just seem like, how could people worry about these things? How could people worry about, you're young and yeah, you're not married or in a relationship, but you still can do that. At least you can go out. At least you can go out and meet people. At least you can, you know, use a dating app. At least you can go out on a date, and it's very different for somebody like me or for those of us who are very sick that can't really do those things, especially right now in the middle of a global pandemic. So, I know that I'm not the only one that has these thoughts. I do like start feeling bad after the fact, and I'm just like, how could you be so insensitive? There are people out there that are very lonely. That's another thing that I've become sort of um desensitized to because I've been isolated for years, and I'm just like, one thing that I've been hearing a lot during the pandemic is how people are suffering from depression, and it's just been so hard for them, and they just don't know how they got through it, and now they suffer from depression because they weren't able to go out with their friends. And I'm just like, man, like the eye rolling, my eyes feel like they're gonna roll out of my face. I roll so hard. um but again, these are people whose lives were, who are social. Some people are social. I was never social even before my illness, and especially not now. And I think I've become so accustomed or even desensitized to being alone and being lonely that it's just normal. It's just like my normal. Um, like those of us who have pain, we have a baseline pain that we become accustomed to. So it's not that we don't feel it, it's just there all the time. So we don't really know anything else. So we know when we have more than our baseline pain or maybe less than our baseline pain. And I think it's the same with, loneliness, isolation. I did feel it a little bit during the pandemic. Like I'm a little bit more isolated, but there were people here in the house all the time. So we were all isolated together. And so I listened to people. The pandemic was just one of those things where I would just hear people complain, and I just thought to myself, man, these people are so spoiled and so, full of themselves. They can't stay at home for 1 second. People just don't want to be alone with their thoughts. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, nobody does. That it's something that will drive you crazy. We just have gotten used to it because we're sick and we don't have a choice. We have to be, stuck at home, especially since we're high risk. We can't go out anywhere. And so it is hard to kind of bring myself out of that sort of narcissistic, kind of self-centered thinking, and say, okay, these are normal people. They're probably psychologically normal and physically normal, or atypical, I guess you could say, or typical. And they are accustomed to being able to go out with their friends or to socialize and do things with other people. And I never really was, and I definitely am not now. And so I kind of have to think about those things and put that, kind of think outside of myself for a moment and say, there are people that really have a difficult time. There are people that are extroverts that like to socialize, that like to be around other people, and they're having a hard time right now. And, you know, I try to sort of get outside of myself and understand that being chronically ill, like I said, I did make a video about chronic illness, narcissism. It does distort your perception of the world. At least from what I've what I've seen since I've been sick. It does seem to distort the way that you perceive things, the way that you respond to other people, the way that you behave in certain situations. You start to act in a bit of a different way, even if you don't notice it anymore. You do, because you're so accustomed to this new reality, that you just start behaving in different ways. And that being very like dismissive of other people. I mean, I think I kind of always was. I've never been the most empathetic person, but being dismissive and also feeling like I'm a victim in a way. I've noticed that as well. Like, it's almost like people are attacking me with their complaints, and it's just like, God, if you only knew, like, if you were only sick, then you would really know how horrible this is. And that's also kind of an inherited thing, because I noticed that both of my parents are that way. For example, my dad was, abused as a kid, brutally abused, him and his siblings. And so for him, it's like other people's suffering is just so pointless. Like, nobody has suffered more than he has. And I think chronic illness does a similar thing to your own psyche. Is nobody's suffering as much as you are. You're suffering more than everyone else. Therefore, you don't need to be sympathetic to other people, because you've got it worse than they do. So I just wanted to talk about that. And if you have experiences like this, please leave them in the comments, because I have a feeling that this is something that is just very, very common with chronically ill people, that we hear somebody complaining, like a non-chronically ill person, and right away we're just like, oh God, these people are just, such babies. But I do think that it is important, even though we are suffering more than they are, maybe physically. I do think it's important that we continue to hold on to our sympathy and our empathy, for others, because I have sort of seen, especially on social media, I have seen what a lack of sympathy and empathy does to people, especially if you're part of a marginalized group. I feel that there is something going on right now, socially and culturally, where marginalized groups are just, they believe that they are permitted to behave however they want and to treat others however they want to, because they're part of a marginalized group. And I think that's really spelling something very, very bad for society, because we're still part of society. Even if we are on the margins of society, we still are part of it. And if we don't treat others the way that we would like to be treated, or if we feel like we have some kind of entitlement to treat others horribly simply because we've suffered, I mean, that like I said, it spells something really, really bad, for society as a whole, and also for your own marginalized group. So I try to be very conscious of those thoughts. I do get kind of angry every now and then. I'll start tweeting things out that are kind of hostile. And I'm starting to notice that pattern, that I just kind of get a little hostile from time to time. And I think a lot of that, again, is from being sick, being locked up, and having no contact with other people besides the people I live with. But I really don't have contact with others, to be quite honest. And I think that makes for a very dangerous cocktail psychologically, for those of us who are very sick. So I just wanted to talk about that really quick. Leave comments down below. Let me know. Let me know what makes you roll your eyes when you hear other people complain. I'm very interested to see, if I'm the only one that feels like this. I really doubt that I am. But yeah, leave your comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.